And we can just dance the night away until we can no more. Shake all the hurt away so you can feel and forget who you used to be. For just tonight, could you just dance the night away?
Alright, we're doing some Reddit reads today. We're going to be doing it as a voiceover for Guild Wars 2 on my alt account. This has been long overdue, as in months. This videos have been sitting in my archive just waiting to be fixed. I've had 4 hours of content that I have to fix out of it because the audio was lost. So, since the audio was lost, I have to essentially read over it with something else. And I didn't like the idea of just putting music to it because that seems really boring. So, what we're going to do is we're going to do some Reddit posts. I'm going to let the bot read it to me, and then we're going to sit here and react a bit to it. While everyone else can enjoy just watching the background information, the background of Guild Wars 2. And I did try it with music at one point. It was too distracting to the game itself because combat noises were still available on it. For whatever reason, my mic was not on. That was the thing, right? So my mic is off, but the in-game's combat is still there, which is quite sad because that proves it was my fault, not the recording's fault. Anyways, so we're going to get to some Reddit posts. I have 5 listed here. They will be in the description as well in case you want to try and send, kind of put your own 2 cents into it. Be nice. Don't be a jerk to people. Obviously, you're good adults. You should know better. And if you're not an adult, you should know better. It is common practice to not be a jerk, especially not online. All right. So the first story we've got is, am I the idiot for not letting my husband and child drink from my cup or eat from my plate? Alright, and we're going to let this thing play out.
AITAH for not letting my husband and child drink from my cup or eat from my plate. I absolutely hate people picking off my plate or using my cup. Lately, my 2-year-old has started trying to pick food out of my plate with his fingers. He's obsessed with my water bottle, and if I put it within reach he takes it and drinks out of it. I don't mind sharing my food, as in putting some of it on his plate for him, but I'm just not wanting anyone putting their fingers in my food or backwashing in my water bottle. My husband has now also started eating out of serving dishes or trying to use my fork. He's seen that I try to teach our son this is mama's plate, this is your plate. We can share, but you can't take food from my plate. My husband says I'm being a germaphobe and that we are family and we should all share, but I've never been a sharer of utensils, and as much as I love our family, I've gotten enough viruses from my son to know better. I also think it's important for a child to know boundaries. They can't just take other people's food, and a grown man should know he can't drink out of a milk carton or eat from a serving dish. My husband said I'm being selfish and OCD about it and asked how I can look at our son and say no to him when he wants to share. Now I feel like a jerk. AITAH?
Okay, here's the thing. I have actually an input on this. As I was growing up, my mom would share her cup and her plate with us as a kid. Not that she's told me before it didn't really bother her. Sometimes it bothered her when we put floaties in her drink and stuff, yes. But, it never really bothered my mom as a whole. Every now and then there would be certain moments where mom's like, please stay out of my soda, I'm trying to drink it. Please stay out of my sandwich, your dad bought this for me, I want to eat it. Etc., etc. But my mom likes sharing. My little sister, the middle sister, doesn't like sharing, because at some point, when she was little she did. But when she got to be a teenager, preteen, she stopped sharing, her drinks. And she won't share if you start touching her food, she won't eat it. Now, I used to tease her for being a germaphobe, but I didn't actually think she was a germaphobe. My sister was germa conscious. There's a difference, all right? My sister told me to my face and to everybody in the family, respectively, that she didn't want germs because one of our other cousins had told her about how that's a really easy way to get sick and how you spread germs that way, right? That's fair, right? Most of us just kind of giggle and goes, okay, and we respected that, right? And I just always did because that's what my sister wanted. She wasn't asking for anything crazy because by the time we were teenagers, my mom was buying us separate drinks anyways. And then when there was a few times in the car when we didn't have separate cups, so my mom just got separate straws. She goes, I need 2 straws for 2 daughters, because my daughters are sharing this cup and one doesn't like sharing straws, right? So it's perfectly fair. And in my opinion, my sister was right? As an adult, I came to realize that you spread germs a lot faster, and especially if your kid's little, right? If your kid's a baby or a toddler, this one's a 2-year-old, so it's basically going into toddler phase. It's not already in toddler phase. I don't know when they start walking. That's when they start calling them toddlers. I think it's like after a year or two. Anyways, but my point is that's a really bad thing to start encouraging them to, right? Two reasons why. One is the germ thing, right? There are germ problems and you shouldn't be sharing germs because kids are very susceptible. It is part of the reason why most people have cold sores, because cold sores is basically, I believe, isn't something native to like your body naturally. You get it from your parents when they kiss you on the mouth or from people you kiss on the mouth, right? It's directly connected to that, right? And babies don't need unnecessary exposure to germs like that. Now, granted, this is a toddler, but the toddler's going to get itself sick in general because you're going to learn, you're going to get exposed to things. But that doesn't mean you should be, as an adult, exposing your adult, probably more matured germs to the kid. Because one thing about germs that people don't know, and some bacteria as well are like this too, some germs, when they're in your body finds ways to neutralize them. Meaning they're still in your body, but your body's just waiting for them to die out or be flushed out, depending on what it is, right? And when that happens, your body is not affected by it. But then the germ is constantly trying to like progress. It's trying to get stronger to fight you to win that fight, right? It's like an animal in a cage trying to claw at the cage. But if you kiss somebody or you sneeze on them or you eat their food and you swap saliva and that germ gets into them, their body may not know exactly what the thing is. And you've just given them a germ that has been fighting your immunity for maybe a few days, maybe a few months, who knows, depending on the thing, right? I don't think months, but, it's fighting you enough that it's already kind of like more like toughy or tankier because your immune system may be better than someone else's. And by doing that, you essentially are giving them an arm-loaded gun. And like, here, this is yours now. See, that's so unfair because of the fact that everyone's immune systems are different and everyone's body works differently. And some people's immunity is immune compromised, too. Now, granted, the situation, they don't mention that. So that's a problem, right? There's no point in putting your child in that phase until your child, let your child build their immunity and grow until they can actually start doing that. Also, this is the second point I'm getting into. Independence, right? Your kid is 2 years old. I'm assuming they're not nursing anymore. I'm assuming they're toddling. They need to have independence. This is when you start teaching them to grab their own cups, to grab their own spoons, to start taking independence and start taking pride in that independence, right? Because you want your kids to want to progress and to move forward in life. I remember my mom telling me from how she raised us kids. Now, granted, I don't remember all of it myself, but my mom said that one of the things about having children and they start toddling, she goes, as much as it breaks your heart, you have to start letting them progress. So she would start handing us a sippy cup. I remember when my little sister, who is actually 8 years difference, 10 years difference, 10 years difference to me, 8 years difference to my other sister, to the middle sister. And I remember seeing that phase, all right? My mom would hand her a sippy cup, and my mom would be missing the days where she got to hold her baby and nurse her and hold her, despite the pain of nursing and the hours of sitting on the couch scrolling through TV waiting for my sister to be done eating, right? But my mom, she'd have that sad look on her face, but she would also be happy because my sister is taking the sippy cup and is now waddling through the living room in the most funniest little penguin walk ever to go sit down and watch cartoons. Like, my mom was proud that she was becoming independent, right? And one of the things that it becomes independent is having your own separate plate. When my little sister was little, my mom... I think my mom told me this, but I can't remember for sure. When my sister and I were little, we shared her mom's plate, but my mom had separate spoons, and she'd use it to feed us. And this was because she didn't have plates small enough to, give us. My little sister came along when we had more money to work with. So my little sister, from the day she was put into a toddler seat to be, when she could sit upright and feed herself, she was given a plate. She was given her own plates, her own silverware, and her own little cups. And she was given several different types of cups. She was given one that had no lid and one that had a lid. The sippy cup one was used so that she could actually drink something without spilling it. And the other one was it was an attempt to try and get her to pick it up herself. So one would have milk or water, and then the other one would have juice in it, And my sister loves juice because my mom, what she did was she picked up the cup one time and she had her sip it, she held onto it and sipped it, and my little sister's eyes went wide. So my little sister became determined to pick that cup up so that she could drink her juice. If she spilled it, my mom, depending on if she cried about it, my mom would go and get her another cup. If my sister didn't cry about it, my mom didn't worry about it because some days she just would play with the juice, right? But my sister learned independence, and then as soon as she was encouraged to be independent, as soon as we taught her to, as soon as she started walking, and we encouraged her to come walking towards us, as soon as she started picking up things and wanting to do those things on her own, we encouraged it. Was it sad to watch my little sister grow up? Heck yeah, it was. But you have to teach them that, because then later in life, they're going to need their independence, and they're going to need to have that drive to do it. Now, that's for your toddler. Now, your husband is an entirely different scenario. Your husband should be shameful. Should be ashamed of himself, because he knows that the germs is up. It honestly feels like your husband is just jealous that your toddler's getting all this special attention, and he thinks it's a loving thing. My fiance and I do share dishes, but you know what the difference is? We don't take food off. We whenever we share plates, right? We both have our own sets of silverware, and we don't like drink each other's water, right? Anytime we have it's one of my favorite things about our relationship currently, as far as when we go eating somewhere special, because we both don't eat a lot, and when you go to get takeout in the United States, most of the food sizes are like enough to take leftovers. The United States is a leftover kind of place. You eat some at the store, then you take some of it home. That's why the portions are so big when you get takeout, along with the prices of why it's so expensive, right? So when you eat something, normally assume, unless you're eating somewhere fancy where they give you like a tiny portion, assume that they're giving you like 2 serving sizes, right? So my fiance and I will go to some of our favorite restaurants, especially my favorite restaurant because I like it and he doesn't have a particular interest in one way or the other. We'll go, and it's like a Thai place that I like, right? We go to this Thai place, we get like one thing together, and we eat out of it together. I have my fork, he has his fork, we have separate drinks. If we have to share a cup, we have separate straws. That's just how it is, right? We don't drink directly from each other's like mouth off the top of the lip and stuff, and we don't eat with the same utensils. And also, we don't like eat half food and then give it to somebody else off your own spoon, right? That's just not how we do that, because it just saves for germs, and we're both adults, right? It's a me respecting him as an adult by not trying to just share things. If we had no other way, say we were in an area that had no extra spoons or cups, we might share. But that is simply because it was be like in a certain situation. In most situations, we just get double of everything. And we'll sit there and we will eat out of the Thai box together and have a conversation, and no big deal. We've done that at restaurants too. We have our own silverware, we have our own cups. We don't drink out of each other's cups. And we just sit there and we have those situations. And even if he has to give me his water and stuff, normally he'll drink from a straw just like I do. He'll pour it into my cup, but he won't have me drink out of his cup directly. Even though it's just water and stuff, right? But the fact of the matter is, your husband, I feel, wants to bond with you. But I also feel like if you're going to do bonding things like that with her, then do that in her comfort of her own thing, right? Bring you guys a plate together with both your foods on it, and then eat with separate silverware. Don't be sharing drinks and double dipping it. And if you're going to do that, have separate straws, right? Have separate straws so there's no spit going into your cup. And then you could still have that romantic, fun bonding thing. Honestly, if it isn't the fact that your husband feels like he's not connecting with you, my other thought is maybe he's just feeling like your son is getting more affections. It's almost like a jealousy or an envy thing, but it's not like a hateful thing. Like, I don't think your husband hates his son for taking your attention or your daughter. I don't know if he said son or daughter. Yeah, it's just son. I don't think it's like a spite thing. I think it's more like he's seeing that and thinking, oh, that's so cute. I want in on that. But, if you're going to do it, there needs to be rules, regulations, and you need to respect each other's opinion. And honestly, eating out of each other's plates, as long as you guys have separate silverware and you're not taking one bite of a chicken and then giving it to your friend, as long as you're eating your section, no double dipping type stuff, and then you're not sharing direct contact with the drink, it will be fine. But honestly, if the mom isn't comfortable with that either, you should respect that. Because if your wife doesn't find it as a loving gesture, then you're not going to get anything out of it. So just respect the fact that she doesn't want to share. And I almost can see if anyone else in the comment section had anything else to say that adds different things to what I said. Once watched a family of 4 eat the same breakfast sandwich. Mom was trying to eat her sandwich. Kid 1 grabbed her hand and then took a slobbery bite. Kid 2 felt left out and had his slobbery bite. Dad had a nibble and he thought it was adorables. And Mom was left with a mangled sandwich. She was the kids' number 3rd sporting event, and had a limit options. She threw the rest out. Yeah. So that's from Faro Anope. That's true, right? That's what I'm also saying too. When you eat someone else's food, especially if there's not a lot of it, or you made just enough for everybody to get, or you order just enough for yourself or others, that's another thing too. When you take from the mouth of another person, you're not being loving. Like I said, when we order food, we've ordered a food that's a takeout that is enough for two people to eat with leftovers. There, about half the time when we got this Thai, for instance, we would have enough to have leftovers, so there'd be enough for us to eat stuff. We'd eat our fill, bring the rest home, and then he will come into the room eating noodles, or I'll come in eating chicken or whatever, because that's what's left. Because it's, we make sure it's a big portion, or at least a fair portion, because of that. And like I said, it's the disrespect on that. I think that you're not the asshole for wanting that, and honestly, as a safety thing, I think you should stand by your guns on the matter. All right, I will put that in the link below, and we are moving on to the next story, which is a Reddit post for "Am I the idiot for, or am I the asshole for telling my mother that I won't see them if they come to visit us on holidays? Myself, male 30, and a female 30, and my partner 29, non-binary, are professional musicians." All right, it's not the part of the title, but I was gonna read a little bit of it.
AITA for telling my mother that I won't see them if they come to visit us on holiday. Myself, 30F, and my partner, 27NB, are professional musicians. On 25/10/25 we have a gig that's an all-day type festival thing. Since this is the first gig that my parents had a chance of actually attending, and with my sister having recently finished high school, we queried if they wanted to come see it. This was posed back in May when our gig was confirmed. Back then, we stressed to them that the week leading up to the event would be stressful for us, and that those dates aren't dates that we are available.
Okay.
Important to know is that my partner has chronic fatigue, and that we plan meticulously around that to ensure that they can keep their professional commitments and promises. My mother and I spoke yesterday, 29/7/25, and she said they were interested in booking 22 and 26 tents, and were currently looking at plane tickets to do so. My heart immediately sank, because my mother is very intense on the "let's do things together" when she is visiting. I reminded her of the previous conversation, the chronic fatigue, and that we would be busy with rehearsals and final preparations/checks on those days, such as packing vans, ensuring all instruments and tech are perfectly set up, and organizing our merch for the gig. She reacted negatively, exactly how I knew she would. Couldn't we just hang out during the evening? We could go out to museums before rehearsals, opposite end of where we would need to be, sightseeing, going to the beach would be relaxing, etc. I gently, but firmly, reiterated that we are not available those dates and suggested that they look at the dates I had discussed with my dad, 23/29 out of 10 instead. That would give them time to land and decompress from flying, and would give us a few days after the gig to do all the things she wanted to do. She got upset, stating that she would have to use 2 days of holiday, instead of 1, started complaining about how my dad doesn't take his holiday in the summer, so he has a lot of holiday left, but she does not. I emphasized with her situation, but also held firm on the boundary that 22 to 26 are days where we are not available. I explained that if those are the days they are coming, it would potentially be hello and goodbye. At most it would be brunch in the mornings, but that we would be unable to join any of her usual sightseeing. She ended the call with a parting statement of, "Well, maybe we just won't come at all then," which broke my heart, because I really wanted them to come see our gig and I was really looking to seeing my dad. Am I the asshole here for setting and maintaining this boundary?
I can answer right away. No, you are not the asshole for setting a boundary with your parents, especially with a installed event, all right? My mother, whenever she wants to plan something with us, she normally double checks us, triple checks with us, even then quadruple checks with us, depending on if it's kind of like, flexible. My mom is aware that us kids have lives, right? Some of us, like myself, are a little bit more low key and a little bit more relaxed, like we're not doing anything crazy. But we do have some of my siblings are a little bit more like, "Hey, let's go do this. We're gonna do this Tuesday, and then 2 days from we're gonna do this." Much more active, right? Going out, socializing, making friends. That's fine. No shame to my siblings. No shame to me for that. My mom knows that each of us have our own social boundaries. Now, speaking on this intuition of your husband or wife, the non-binary partner, I couldn't remember which if it mentioned a specific title, but the non-binary partner has a level of social battery or exhaustion, chronic exhaustions, right? I'm not sure if this is like a social battery situation or if they have like a actual like physical component to it. Sorry, I was trying to think of the word. Because there is two different ones. You can get chronic fatigue from socializing and the stress and stuff because some people don't handle it very well. I'm also like this, where stressing out exhausts me. And it makes me where I'm working overtime for no reason. And same thing with social, like situations. I don't I can handle socializing for so long, but there is a limit where I'm just like, I need to go to the closet and I need to sit down and I need to be quiet and I need to not have anything associate with me. Your social battery drains you. And if it's a physical thing, which also is just as bad and just as horrifying, some people's bodies do not generate the energy they need, right? That being the case, whether it's physical or a mental exhaustion, whatever the case may be, the fact that your partner has fatigue issues makes me really upset that your mom doesn't understand that or doesn't respect that, because that is a problem, right? That is a thing that she should be respecting because that is a condition. And I'm assuming, like, whether she likes it or not, she needs a plan. If she's going to come visit, she has to plan around your schedule, not the way around, right? When I went to get married with my fiance and stuff, we planned it around my parents and the family and stuff there, date-wise. It didn't matter too much, but we did that so that everybody didn't have to call off work for too many hours. We didn't have to worry about people not being able to show up that we wanted there, and just generally speaking, making it easier for everybody else. That didn't mean that we didn't have to do that, but it was so much nicer to do that because we were coming to see them, not the way around. And the same thing when I go visit any of my family back home. That's what we do. We plan around them or family, my friends, because I don't want to just show up and be like, hey, let's go hang out. Oh, you have work? I'm sorry. I guess I'll just chill over here and you miss the opportunity to hang out with me. It's very inconsiderate on my part because my family and friends do want to hang out with me and they want to spend time with me. But if I come at an inconvenient time and just expect, hey, hello, take care of me, bond with me, then it comes off as being very selfish and very inconsiderate of their feelings, especially since I don't live in the state that they live in anymore. If I lived in the same state, it may not matter, because then if I show up and they're busy, I'd be like, okay, well, I'll head home and I'll see you next Tuesday instead, right? That's how that works. You can't just be showing up like that. And they may be, I don't know if these guys live in different states or if they just live in different, areas. Because they could live in one section of the state and the other one lives in the other side of the state. But you can't just show up like that. Also, I would have called your dad after this conversation with your mom. I would have called your dad and said, hey, could you guys work around this? Because mom has this problem and we have this problem, right? It's okay. I understand the mom's issue about not having the extra day off. But call in sick on the day before your vacation. Put the time in off. It sounds horrible, but I've seen some people do it. I've done it myself. Sometimes you have to do that because really, family should matter more and time off should matter more than one day at work, right? And that sounds horrible. But, especially if you live in the United States, this is a problem. The United States does not give its workers nearly enough vacation time, and so it's part of the reason why people are so stressed and high-strung, and why they're workaholics, because if you don't make money, you can't, pay the bills, and if you can't pay the bills, you can't live. And there's such a high standard of you can't take any time off kind of thing. And without it being an inconvenience, or being able to not having that support network for your paycheck and stuff. And that's pretty crappy things, right? It's just one day, though, right? I've had to do this with days where I need 2 days off, where I told them months in advance, hey, I need these 2 days off. And my boss is like, yeah, you got them. And then as soon as it gets closer to that day, they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, we have to cancel. All I did was call in twice because I had they would only penalize me for, I had enough penalty strike rules to do that. So I would take penalties in order to see family and visit. We did that one time when we went to go on a vacation with my family. It wasn't necessarily a nice thing to do, and I didn't like it, but I wasn't going to turn down my vacation because I told them point blank, I need these times off. I have the vacation time to do it. But they didn't, they failed to plan on their part. That's not an emergency on mine, It sounds horrible, but with this being a simple vacation, she probably could walk up to the boss and say, hey, I have a situation where I need another day off. Can I take an unpaid day off, 1 day unpaid off is not going to break your bank, because especially since your husband's still working too. And if it does, maybe you should be looking into getting a different job. And I say that because of the fact that if your job depends on you being there for 1 day and it ruins it, that's not a very stable job. It's just not. And this is coming from someone who worked in retail and was making about somewhere between $500 and $700, depending on time frame, because as you stay with the company, you get more paid more, right? And I was working 40 hours a week for the 6 to 700, and for 5 to 600, I was working part time. That's where like a Walmart and a few other places, right? And like even when I was working at Sonic and I was making out 400, I was still getting by, somewhat. And like with Sonic, I ended up quitting because of the fact that like I just wasn't making enough, and there was some drama there. But like the thing of the matter is that if you can't make enough to live, you don't need to be at that job. You need to find a different one. Or if you can't find a different job, say it's in a particular field, then take a second job. It's just how it is. I don't think that's what's going on with the mom, though, so it's not an issue. But I do think that your mom is inconsiderate, and she needs to really consider what you and your partner need. I'm going to look at some comments and see if they have anything that would be interesting information that I didn't think of. Someone says, not the a-hole, you have a shiny spine and use it. It's unfortunate she won't budge. I'd go low contact or no contact with her. I wouldn't do that. You should not be the only one facing consequences. That might be a little bit of a jump. I would go behind her back and go to Dad and be like, hey, Dad, can you, like, say something to her? She goes, the OP actually answered. Oh, okay, this is interesting. I'm already fairly low contact with her. We live in different countries. Oh, so she can't just come visit. My hesitation is around my dad. They're still together, and he's unfortunately very conflict avoidant. Ah, okay. I could see him at a lot less if I cut off my mom. Ah, okay. So that does change things. Honestly, I would just hold to your guns about it. Hold to your guns about it, and especially if they live countries apart. I live states apart, not countries apart. That's a pretty far jump. She needs to be considerate of you and your feelings, not the way around. Alright, we are moving on to the next one, which is, am I the a-hole for leaving work early without telling anyone because it was over 130 Fahrenheit where I work? Jesus Christ. Okay.
AITA for leaving work early without telling anyone because it was over 130 degrees Fahrenheit where I work. Edit 2. I am cleared of all trouble by HR and my boss, who was not happy to be called into an emergency Zoom meeting. I sent an email and image of the thermo and was swiftly contacted by HR for a meeting as my contract had not been upheld by WB, mainly the temp part. I am now under the watch of a different manager who is closer to where I am working, and I will have one other employee with me until the end of next week when my boss returns.
Okay.
Thanks for all the comments you guys left. A lot of them helped open my eyes to the fact I truly walked out on my job. I hadn't thought about that before, but the comments really brought it to the forefront of my mind. So I, 18M, am currently interning at a very prestigious nursery in the Midwest.
Oh God.
It's a really big deal for me because the company has government connections, and having this on my resume basically guarantees me future job opportunities. But here is the issue. My boss, let's call him MB, has been out of town on vacation for the past week. Normally, he's the one who works alongside me and checks in. But because he is gone, his boss, WB, who works out of a completely different office across the state from where I'm stationed, has been supervising me remotely using the security cameras in the greenhouses. The greenhouse I work in is about a mile away from mine and my boss's office building, and since MB is gone, I haven't had access to the air-conditioned office at all. I've been stuck at the greenhouses the entire time in the heat. Now, the weather has been brutal lately, with highs around 100 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside the greenhouse, it's even worse. There's no fan, no AC, and barely any ventilation. The only way I can cool it down is by opening the roll-up walls about 3 feet, but that doesn't do much. Even with shade cloth, the temperature inside reached over 130 degrees Fahrenheit today. I was working in those conditions for 6 hours straight before I started feeling lightheaded and got a headache. Since I couldn't cool off and had nowhere to rest, again, I had no access to the office, I made the decision to leave about 2 hours early. I didn't notify WB because I knew she'd be upset, and I don't have any sick leave to use anyway. About 30 minutes after I got home, WB checked the security cameras, saw I was gone, and called me. She asked where I was, and I told her I had gone home because I wasn't going to keep working in a greenhouse that was 130 degrees Fahrenheit. She told me that if I didn't return immediately and finish out the day, I'd be suspended with no pay for a week. Problem is, I live about 30 minutes away and can't work past 5 p.m. It was already 4:30, so there wouldn't have been enough time to drive back and get anything done. So here is where I might be the ass. I told her that even if I could make it back in, I wouldn't go back in because it was just too hot there, and that if she wants to make sure the plants in there are fine, she show.
Let me see. It got cut off. She be expected to work in dangerous conditions with no break and no access to AC. Okay, and then they say, "I'm out of the AO for going home early." As add context to my contract, it does state that I cannot work in conditions above 15. Okay, right there, that edit to more context. My contract, right there. Throw the contract at her. Say, hey, my contract says I can't be working in 150 degrees. I'm pretty sure that in most cases, if you reach 130 degrees, they make you go home. I think I have even, because I lived in the Midwest, right? I lived in Missouri specifically. All right. The humidity alone will drown you. All right. The heat is horrible. Right. But when it got to be 120, I remember them evacuating my school one time, and they said, okay, everyone's going home. It's 120. But the reason they evacuated was because the school's AC broke. It broke down. And they sent people home because the AC wasn't on, and it was 120 degrees out, and they didn't want the kids to bake because I remember the elementary kids were being taken home. But here's the reason why. My school was connected by one building. You could literally, well, it's kind of not connected. It was they had the elementary, they had the middle school, and then you had your high school. The elementary and middle school were connected by hallways. High school and middle school and stuff were separated by a walkway. So literally, you could walk from one end of the school to the next without actually having to go more than a few feet. They were all within the same block section. It was amazing. I really loved it as a kid because it made it so much easier to get my siblings. Because I would get on the bus with my siblings and make sure that they were there, and we would all meet up at the bus ramp and get on the bus together. Especially when my little sister was little. When she was in kindergarten, I'd walk down there to her and pick her up. But when she got old enough to be independent and she could go there herself, we just met her on the ramp and then got on the bus together, right? But off topic of that, in our school, what ended up happening is at one time the air conditioner died in the elementary school. I don't remember if high school. I think the high school's air conditioning still worked. But because they were letting the kids go, the elementary kids go, and the middle school kids, they debated about this for several hours. I overheard several teachers talking about this, and I was later informed more information about it when I got home. But what ended up happening is they were sending the elementary kids home and middle school because the air conditioning was shut off. It was broken. And they started sending them home. But they debated, should we send the high school kids home? They thought about leaving the high school kids in school because their air conditioning was still on. It was on a separate system, and it hadn't broke. But, or it was on the same system, but the breaker for it, I guess, didn't break or something. Whatever the case may be, it was fine. They thought about not sending them home, but several teachers said, well, my kids in my class have a high school brother or sister who walk them home or ride with them on the bus or whatnot. And if their parents could pick up their kid, their elementary kid, and then they can't pick up their teenagers may have to walk home in this heat because some parents only had enough gas to get to one trip home or make one trip home. And so and some of them couldn't pick up their kids until the others got off. So some of those elementary kids would just have to go to the high school and follow their high school siblings around so that they could get to school. So eventually they decided that it just made more sense. And then some teachers talked about how it's not fair, and some kids talked about how it wouldn't be fair to send half the school home and let the other half of the school stay in. And that the schedules for the day, the learning experience would already be disjointed anyways. So they decided to evacuate everyone and say, okay, everyone's going home. The air conditioning is working fine in the high school, but go home. And the other reason why they did it was because it gave them more time to more space to work on it. Because one of the other mechanics said, well, we don't know if it spreads. He's like, maybe the air conditioning system in the high school may be barely holding in. So they would need to shut down all of the air conditioners in both units, in both buildings and stuff, to see what was actually broken. It's a good thing they did because later when we came back to school, and they talked about how the school, I overheard some teachers talking about it, and my mom confirmed it too because she was friends with one of the teachers, or she was having a conversation with the teachers, that one of the high school's air conditioners was barely hanging in there, and if they hadn't evacuated, said everyone's leaving at noon, get on the bus, head home, we're calling the day short, the high school's air conditioning would have went out probably an hour or two later because the damage that was happening. The overheating was affecting the high school ones too. The teachers felt bad because they talked about how it was awful because they couldn't leave. They had to stay for a few hours, and even they had to be dismissed early because even as adults, they had a limit of where it got to be like 125 or 123, something like that, and they said, we can't stay here. It's not safe. Gotta go. Because they didn't want to risk their teachers getting sick or injured or overheated, especially since some of the teachers are older, right? But this is also a greenhouse with no ventilation. This is coming from a school that had ventilation, despite the fact that they opened doors and had fans in the hallway. They were plugging things in, like they had ventilation, and even the teachers were like, "No, we ain't doing this," you know. So the fact that that your contract says that, I would have pointed that out. My contract says 115 degrees, and you have no shade. There isn't like a place to cool off. There isn't like a shady spot. Nothing. I would have called your boss, or I would have made a documentation of it. You're also an 18-year-old kid, if I remember correctly, and 18-year-olds are, I think in some states, they're not allowed to work past certain age, like a certain time frame. I don't know about the 18-year-old specifically. It could be part of his contract. That probably is what it is. Probably part of his contract, not his 18-year-olds. But 18-year-olds should not be in 130-degree weather in a ventilated place with no shade. That's like saying, go work in the desert, barebacked, and then come back to us. That's not kosher. We're gonna read some last posts. You're the idiot. You left without telling one. Shut up. You didn't tell them because you knew they'd be mad. I have no problem with you leaving. It was crazy hot and you had no place to cool down. It's a safety issue, but leaving without telling someone seems like a unreasonable response to suspension to anyone. No, it's not. Here's why. One, it's in his contract. It says in his contract that he cannot work in 115-degree weather, right? That is point blank that. Now, granted, even if it wasn't that, right? Even if the contract didn't say that, 130-degree weather is dangerous, right? Like, especially when there's no shade. And, like, you left 2 hours early, that sucks, but, like, you can make it up later. And also the fact of the matter is that, yeah, okay, I can see that you should have said something. As a teenager, you should have said something. You should have said, hey, as a professional in a workplace, you should say, hey, I'm leaving. Because this isn't about sick day. This is a safety issue. You could have said, hey, I'm leaving. It's a safety issue. But as somebody who's been in the situation, I know exactly what he's feeling, right? It's intimidating when you have a job, especially a job you actually need or want, especially with this one having opportunities, right? You don't want to disappoint, and you don't want to be told no when you're going to pass out, right? You're getting lightheaded, right, in this greenhouse, and you're the only one out there. And what if you passed out on camera and she didn't see you, or this person didn't see you until you have been face down the dirt for a long time? That could kill you, right? I get it, and I don't disagree with you leaving. I would have called the boss and just said, I'm leaving. It's 130 degrees in here. I'm getting dizzy. I'm not sick. I'm potentially having symptoms of heat stroke. I'm not doing this. My contract says 150 degrees. And then I would have, after I left, whether this individual was complaining or not, I would have texted the boss or made an email trail saying, hey, I left today. I left 2 hours early because the greenhouse was this temperature. I will make up the hours later, etc., etc., etc. Because you could have said, hey, can I come? You can ask the boss if I can come in 2 hours early when the sun is still kind of quiet, it's a little lower, so that you don't have to deal with that. Because that could be another thing too. Some of that stuff you can hold off for 2 hours. It's probably a greenhouse. You're probably dealing with plants and stuff. The plants will be fine for 2 hours, alone. It won't matter to them that much, unless the thing catches fire, So no, I don't think you're an a-hole for walking out. I do think you should have said something, but I also understand why you didn't, because as a young person, and especially if this is your first job or a job you really, really need, there is that intimidation of what if I say something and then they still make me do it, right? You don't have a backbone and you don't know your worth. It sounds horrible, but like when I first worked, I didn't know my worth. I was willing to do all the work and do all the back lifting stuff, and I did. I put my foot in. I did the best work I could do and whatnot. But there is a certain point when you're a worker, you need to know what is safe for you and what is your limits and what is a reasonable limit, because it is hard to tell what a reasonable limit is. But 130 degrees is a very good limit, and we don't be playing with that kind of fire. All right, so I ended up going over a little bit with this video, so I'm gonna do the other 3 stories in a separate video, and they'll be posted probably about 30 minutes after each other, so you'll still see them and stuff. And I'm gonna find another story so that we have 3 and 3. Alright, thanks for everyone who popped in. Hopefully it was interesting. And I'll see you in the next video.
And we can just dance the night away until we get no more. Shake all the hurt away so you can feel and forget who you